Hi everyone, and welcome to The Sleepy Scientist. I'm really happy you're here. Tonight, we're going to go on a calm and quiet trip to learn something amazing. So get comfy, take a deep breath, and let's enjoy this peaceful science story together. Before we start, tell me in the comments, where are you watching from and what time is it for you right now? If you like relaxing science videos, don't forget to tap the like button. Now let's begin.
Beneath our feet in a world soft and dark, roots reach quietly into the earth. They do not rush or scream or blaze like stars. Instead, they move with patience, like threads of thought winding through memory. If you close your eyes and listen, you might almost feel their slow journey, one breath at a time, as they whisper their way into the soil's hidden spaces. Every root is a seeker. It tastes the minerals, touches the cold, feels the dryness, remembers the moisture. And in a way that has no words, the roots begin to map the past. Imagine a young plant just born from a seed. The surface world may shout with birds and breezes, but the seedling only knows the underground silence. It unfurls a first root like a question, pressing into the dirt, learning the shape of the land. That root splits and grows, then splits again, branching like gentle rivers underground. The root doesn't simply grow downward, it senses, it learns. In dry seasons, it remembers the direction where the rain once soaked deepest. In rocky patches, it turns aside. In cool, damp places, it rests and drinks. Every fork in its path is a memory of survival. Scientists have studied this quiet intelligence and called it tropism. There's gravitropism, where roots grow with gravity's pull. There's hydrotropism, the subtle sensing of water. There's thigmotropism, the root's ability to feel and wrap around stone. These names are long and strange, but what they describe is something gentle and ancient. A living body learning the land with every soft push through darkness. The root doesn't think like we do. It remembers through growth. It answers through direction. Its memory is the shape it takes. In some forests, trees hundreds of years old still carry the memory of their first rains in the patterns of their roots. They bend and stretch in directions carved by seasons long gone, anchoring deep where storms once fed the land. Scientists once mapped the roots of an old pine and saw a strange spiral in the network underground. Later, they realized it followed the shape of an old spring that had dried up decades earlier. The root had once found water there and had never forgotten. Roots are not only memories, they are messengers. Through the thin filaments called root hairs and the networks of fungal mycelium, they speak to one another. A root of one plant can warn its neighbors about drought, disease, or danger. In the language of molecules and moisture, they whisper across distances unseen. And when the rain finally falls again, those roots, patient and listening, reach up to greet it, remembering the rhythm of the sky. In deserts, roots stretch impossibly long, some diving dozens of feet into the earth just to find a drop of water. These roots do not rush. They wait, sensing tiny shifts in moisture, guided by the memory of storms long past. In wetlands, other roots float like gentle fingers, anchoring loosely in soft mud while breathing through tiny pores above water. These forms are different, but the story is the same. Roots adapting, remembering, reaching. So when you see a tree, a flower, a blade of grass, remember that half its story is underground. A quiet half filled with memory. A story of slow courage. A story that began with the question, where does the rain go? And every root that grows is still answering it. Let's drift deeper now, into the middle of the Earth's quiet library, where the roots have carved out a gentle history. Each path is a story, and each pause in the soil is a paragraph. Some roots twist not because they must, but because the land itself once twisted. Some dive deep not from thirst, but from ancient instinct. The memory of where water once flowed is etched in their shape. Imagine that, plants tracing rivers that are no longer there, following the ghost of rain. These are not just roots, but long, living lines of memory. Below a forest, roots intertwine like hands held in sleep. Not all from the same tree, but from many, touching across boundaries in soft connection. Beneath the oldest oaks and pines, scientists have discovered shared networks of roots bonded by fungal threads called mycorrhizae. These threads are thin as whispers and long as thought. They pass nutrients from one tree to another, and even between different species. A birch may give to a fir, A maple may feed a struggling seedling. This silent generosity is not random. It's as if the forest remembers who needs help and who once helped before. In these underground networks, there is no shouting. The communication flows in molecules, in the slowing of sugar and the increase of nitrogen. When a tree is attacked above ground, by insects, drought, or disease, it sends signals below. And the roots, acting like nerves beneath the skin of the forest, pass the message on. Nearby trees begin to prepare, changing the chemistry of their leaves, thickening their bark, slowing their breath. It is defense shared like memory, learned not through books or sound, but through the living language of the soil. And it is not only forests that remember. In a prairie, beneath soft grasses that bend with wind, roots form a net of resilience. Each blade of grass might seem lonely, but beneath, the roots are woven together like threads in a blanket. When fire comes, a common visitor in such lands, the grasses above may burn, but the roots survive, sleeping through the heat, waiting for rain. And when the storm finally returns, the green bursts upward, not from nothing, but from the quiet memory held below. In the world of rice paddies and flooded plains, some roots grow upward instead of down. Called pneumatophores, these roots rise like tiny chimneys from the water, breathing for the plant. Each breath they take is measured, timed to the rhythm of tide and flood. They don't forget where the water comes from or how high it once rose. They adapt always. A kind of memory shaped not by thought but by structure. Plants even remember what to forget. In experiments, scientists dropped water onto the leaves of mimosa plants, startling them closed. But after repeated droplets, the plants stopped reacting. They had learned it wasn't danger, and when tested again days later, they still remembered. This, too, is a kind of root-deep knowledge, how to let go, how to save energy, how to trust the rhythm of the world. And so, beneath every field, every garden, every wild stretch of green, there is a layer of soft, growing thought. The roots feel the minerals of 1,000 seasons, the moisture of vanished rains, the warmth of sun passed through stone. They adjust without complaint, bending their bodies in response to the shape of the land. Some roots cling tightly to rocks in mountain crevices, their grip slow but certain. Others grow sideways across shallow ground, curling under stones and into cracks, shaping themselves around the earth's quiet resistance. Even in places where humans have forgotten the land, roots remember. In cracked sidewalks and broken roads, tiny plants push through. Their roots find the forgotten dust, the smallest bit of soil, and press in. They do not need an invitation. The memory of growth is inside them. In abandoned cities and fallen buildings, green always returns, not because it rebels, but because it remembers how. We often think of roots as anchors, and they are. But they are also explorers, archivists, and messengers. They write in silence, they respond in softness, they endure without protest. They hold the weight of trees and the dreams of seeds. They don't just survive. They listen, they remember, and they prepare. So when you walk across grass or stand under a tree, you are not above something forgotten. You are above a living story, unfolding beneath your feet. A gentle, rooted awareness that holds the earth together, not in noise, but in the quiet persistence of remembering where the rain once fell. Now imagine the journey of a root not just through soil, but through time. From the moment it first touched the earth to the centuries it has spent beneath us, it has been writing its own version of history, slowly, patiently, gently. There is no rush in root life. There is only rhythm, a rhythm that echoes the beat of rain, the rise of sun, the softness of seasons passing one after another like breath. Roots never stop growing. Even in the stillest forests, even in the oldest groves, they continue to stretch just a little farther, like fingers brushing the edges of memory. In the great redwood forests of the West, roots of enormous trees don't go deep, they go wide. Stretching out like arms through the fog-washed ground, they tangle together, holding each other up. No single redwood stands alone. Beneath the soil, they are woven like one vast living fabric. One root begins, another picks up its path. In this way, the trees support each other not just with wood and trunk and leaf, but with the quiet commitment of connection. The memory of wind, Fire and time is carried not just in rings of wood, but in the paths roots take around each other. Even in the icy soil of tundras where the freeze comes deep and harsh, roots wait. Some lie dormant for years beneath snow and silence, holding the memory of warmth in their cells. Then, with the brief return of light, they come alive again, drinking the melt of forgotten snows. These roots have no calendar, no language, no clock, but they know exactly when to rise. And in that moment they bloom not only with life, but with the history of their land written into every fiber. In mangrove forests, roots live half in water, half in air. They arch like stilts above the waves, gathering salt and breathing where most plants would drown. These roots curve with grace, each bend shaped by tides, storms, and years of tidal whispers. Their form tells a story of struggle and adaptation, of holding steady in shifting sands. A mangrove's roots do more than survive. They change the land around them. They slow the current, gather sediment, make new soil where none was. In this way, roots do not just remember the land, they create it. There are plants whose roots send out runners, tiny clones, little offshoots that crawl across the land and sprout again. In time, a single seed can become a grove, a field, a forest, and all of it held together by the same root memory, an echo passed along like a gentle inheritance. Some of these root systems are older than the mountains they grow beside. There is a stand of aspens in Utah, all sharing a single root system that is over 80,000 years old. One plant, one root, countless trees. The past held not in books, but in bark and breath. Even in the most human of places, parks, gardens, farms, roots remember. They carry the stories of hands that planted, storms that passed, droughts that tested, and caretakers who forgot or returned again. The soil may be turned, the top broken, but underneath, roots whisper still. They remember the places where the hose dripped too long or the sun scorched too hard. They turn toward the memory of compost, of care, of neglect, and still they grow. We do not often see this. We look at the leaves, the flowers, the fruit, but everything we admire above the surface is shaped by what lives below it. The roots that bend and pause and stretch and yield, these are the real storytellers of the plant. And their language is not sound but structure, not word but water, not noise but nourishment. In every step we take, we touch a world woven with remembering. The ground is not still. It holds the quiet labor of root and rock, of water and waiting. Roots do not forget. They grow into the memory of every storm, every footstep, every season. And as they grow, they anchor not just the plant, but the land itself. They hold the soil from washing away. They hold the forest from falling apart. They hold the memory of earth, pressed into shape by time. So when the rain comes again, and it always does, the roots rise gently to meet it, as if welcoming an old friend, not in celebration, not in surprise, but in a calm certainty. This is the rhythm they've known since the first sprout. This is the promise of the deep. And so they drink, slowly, gratefully, growing ever forward into the soft and endless memory of the world beneath our feet. Beneath every forest, every field, every quiet patch of green, there is a world that speaks without words. It is not silent. It hums softly like breath passing through a flute of earth and root. Here, under the leaves and stems and petals we see, the soil itself is alive with messages. They travel not through the air, but through threads thinner than hair, through pulses of chemistry, through whispers made of moisture. This is the underground network, the living web that connects plant to plant, root to root, fungus to tree. And though we do not hear it, this secret language shapes the forest, one silent sentence at a time. It begins with a fungus, not the kind that grows as a mushroom on a fallen log, but a thread-like kind that lives beneath the surface, threading its way through soil and stone. These threads are called mycelium, and they are the voice and ear of the earth. They stretch for miles beneath forests, connecting one plant to another like veins through a body. When a tree breathes in the sun and makes sugar, it sends some of that sugar down into its roots. There, it shares with the fungi. And in return, the fungi pass on water, nitrogen, and phosphorus, nutrients gathered from faraway pockets of soil that the tree's roots could never reach alone. But this exchange is more than trade. It is conversation. When a tree is attacked by insects, by heat, by disease, it sends chemical signals through its roots into the mycelium, and the message spreads. Trees nearby begin to prepare. They thicken their leaves, release protective oils, change their chemistry. This is not instinct. It is warning. It is knowledge passed through the soil. The forest listens. The forest responds. In this way, the mycelium is not just a connector. It is an underground mind. Scientists have found that when two trees are linked by fungi, they grow differently than when they are not. They share more. They defend more. They grow in rhythm. One study even showed that when a parent tree was cut down, its remaining roots continued to feed the saplings around it through the fungal network, like a final act of care. This hidden network is sometimes called the Wood Wide Web, a map of connections so vast and fine, it rivals the internet in complexity. But it is older, quieter, and far more patient. And it is not just trees. Tiny plants, grasses, wildflowers, all of them take part. Some fungi form partnerships with hundreds of plant species at once. They build bridges across species, across generations. In return for sugar, they offer protection, information, strength. And they do it invisibly, softly, without noise or pride. This is a language that does not shout. It hums, murmurs, flows. Imagine the soil as a great soft mind, where thoughts move not in words but in warmth and water, where an idea is a drop of nitrogen, a feeling is a molecule of sugar, and memory is the twisting path of a root. There is no center to this mind, no single brain, but there is intelligence, a knowing, a pattern that holds, and through this pattern the plants speak not only of danger but of change. When a drought begins, the roots tell each other. When the seasons shift, the mycelium prepares the plants for what comes next. It is a soft wisdom, born from listening. There are places where this network has been broken, by farming, by building, by cutting down too many trees. And when the connection is lost, the plants struggle. They grow thinner. They fail to warn each other. They do not die right away, but the silence grows heavy. It is as if they are isolated from their own kind, unable to hear, unable to be heard. Scientists are now learning how to heal this. By reintroducing fungi, by letting wild plants grow again, by feeding the soil not just with compost, but with community. Beneath our gardens, too, this language lives. If the soil is healthy, the roots of carrots, tomatoes, and beans all speak to each other, guided by the same quiet symphony. Some gardeners now plant in ways that encourage this underground harmony, placing companion plants near each other not just for beauty, but for conversation. It is a different kind of farming, not one of control, but of trust. The next time you walk across grass or rest in the shade of a tree, remember that beneath you is a world not sleeping, but speaking. It does not use words or wind, but it is alive with messages. The roots you cannot see are holding hands with others. The soil you do not touch is carrying stories from one end of the forest to another. And the fungi you do not hear are weaving it all together into something ancient, invisible, and beautiful. Let's sink deeper into the underground, where roots and fungi continue their slow, steady dialogue. In the soft darkness, where sunlight never reaches, communication takes a different form. There is no voice, no echo, no language in the way we understand it. But there is meaning. A single thread of mycelium can pass a message from one tree to another dozens of feet away. Through pulses of chemical change, through shifts in pH and electrical signals, this network tells the forest what it needs to know. And the forest listens, not with ears but with roots and cells and soft responses. In tropical forests, where the ground is rich and the canopy high, this communication becomes even more complex. Trees of entirely different species share the same fungal partners. Orchids, palms, vines, and hardwoods all plug into the same web, sending and receiving the same signals. It is a democracy of sorts, not one of politics but of survival. The fungi do not choose favorites. They feed those who feed them, connect those who respond, and ignore those who do not. Over time, a rhythm emerges, a pattern of giving and receiving that allows the entire forest to stay alive. Some fungi even act like diplomats. They regulate the flow of nutrients, directing more to plants that are stressed or under attack. If a young seedling is struggling in the shade, the fungi may funnel it extra nitrogen borrowed from a nearby adult tree, not out of kindness but out of balance. The fungi depend on a healthy forest, and so they maintain it one quiet thread at a time. There are studies now that show how carbon flows through these underground highways. A tree in full sunlight can share some of its photosynthetic bounty with a neighbor in the shadows. A dying tree can pass on its remaining energy before it falls. This flow of life between plants is not accidental, it is strategic. Trees don't just compete, they cooperate, especially when they are connected by the fungal threads that bind them beneath the surface. But not all messages are generous. Some are warnings. When a plant is invaded by pests or fungus or bacteria, it changes its root chemistry. That shift travels through the soil. Nearby plants sense the change and prepare their own defenses. They alter their own chemistry before the attacker ever reaches them. It is like the forest pulling up a blanket before the cold arrives. Not out of fear, but out of wisdom born from centuries of listening to the soil. In desert ecosystems where resources are scarce, these partnerships are even more essential. A single cactus may share its fungal partner with dozens of nearby shrubs. The fungi, in turn, help each plant stretch its reach, finding pockets of water deep below or hidden between rocks. Without this connection, the desert would be even more barren. But because of it, life persists where it seems impossible. And the fungi themselves are shaped by this relationship. Their bodies are not rigid or uniform. They grow according to what they find. When they meet a nutrient-rich patch of soil, they branch and thicken. When they sense a thirsty root, they grow toward it. They are listeners first and then responders. In this way, the fungi are not passive threads. They are active participants, shaping the forest as much as the trees above. There is even evidence now that these networks respond to rhythm, daily cycles, lunar phases, even vibrations in the ground. They change their growth patterns depending on the time of day. They pulse more quickly when the moon is full. These are not coincidences. They are signs that the network is more than a chemical highway. It may be a kind of awareness, not a mind like ours, but a system tuned to the rhythms of the planet. The idea of intelligence in fungi was once dismissed, but as we study more, we find that awareness does not need a brain. It needs only a system that can sense, respond, and remember. And that is what these networks do. When they are cut, they remember the wound. When they are nourished, they grow, they adapt, they learn. And through this learning, they help entire ecosystems survive. In gardens and farms where this fungal web is intact, plants grow more resilient. Crops yield more food. Soil holds more moisture. It is not just about nutrition. It is about communication. A healthy soil is not silent. It is a conversation. A place where roots and fungi trade knowledge in every breath of water and every grain of nutrient passed from one to another. This is not magic, it is nature. Complex, ancient, and utterly patient. Beneath us the earth is not still. It is whispering. It is listening. It is alive with thought, not in words or dreams, but in the flow of life itself. Now picture the end of a long summer, when the leaves begin to change and fall drifts slowly through the air. Above ground, the forest begins to sleep. But underground, the conversation continues. The trees pull back their energy and the fungi slow their spread. The nutrients move differently now, not toward growth, but toward storage, preservation, endurance. The roots, once filled with sugar from sunlit days, begin to share their final gifts with the fungal network. And in return, the fungi hold them through the winter, anchoring their memory in the soil's stillness. This exchange is more than survival. It is a quiet trust, a rhythm passed down through generations of trees and fungi. Some of the partnerships formed underground today are the same as those formed hundreds of years ago. The same threads may touch the children of trees that once shared shade long before any human walked the land. These bonds are not fleeting. They are inherited, relived, and remembered in each new sprout that grows into the web of life. In ancient forests where human hands have never disturbed the ground, Scientists have traced fungal networks that span entire hillsides, connecting thousands of plants across valleys and ridges. These are not just webs. They are landscapes of memory, places where nutrients have traveled, where warnings have echoed, where trees have lived and died and lived again, all held together by threads thinner than a single hair. These threads, these filaments of communication, form a living archive, storing not just food, but the silent story of survival. Even in the darkest parts of the earth, caves, root chambers, and layers where no light can reach, the fungal world continues. Some species live entirely without sun-fed plants, drawing their energy from minerals, from decaying matter, from the breath of stones themselves. And still they form networks. Still they reach. Still they listen. It is as if the need to connect is older than light, more essential than growth itself. The roots, too, grow toward them, even in the absence of warmth, guided by some ancient pull. This brings us to something gentle yet astonishing. In recent experiments, scientists have observed that mycelium can solve problems. When placed in a maze, the fungal threads will grow toward a food source, choosing the shortest path, adapting their shape to fit the puzzle. When faced with obstacles, they try alternate routes, remember dead ends, and adjust, not with thought but with process, not with mind but with memory made of motion. They do not forget where they have been. Their shape becomes their map. It is this memory, not stored in words but in direction, that defines the underground world. The forest does not rely on a single voice. It relies on the harmony of many. Roots that bend around rock, fungi that stretch through sand, a seedling reaching for water it cannot see. All guided by the shape of the land, the scent of the past, the pulse of something larger than itself. We may walk over this world every day without knowing it's there. But if we could see it, really see it, we would find a shimmering map beneath our feet, a web of quiet knowledge, glowing with the echo of 1,000 seasons. In that map, every path is a sentence, every node a decision, every bridge a moment when two lives touched and shared and carried on. Some farmers now speak of listening to their soil, not just testing its chemicals but observing how it feels, how it holds, how it gives. They are learning to farm not against the land but with it, letting cover crops feed the fungi, letting diverse plants build richer conversations, letting the roots speak and the fungi answer. The result is not just healthier crops, it is healing. And for those who simply tend a garden or plant a single flower in a pot, this connection still holds. Even a window box can hum with quiet messages if the soil is alive. Even a small root can find its way into the ancient story. You do not need a forest to be part of this symphony. You only need to remember that below the surface, life is speaking in a language of giving, of reaching, of remembering. So let us walk softer. Let us care for the soil not as dirt but as a world full of voices too small to hear, too old to name, too essential to ignore. Beneath every step is a song, sung not in air but in earth. A conversation older than speech, still ongoing, still waiting for us to listen. High in the mountains, where the wind moves like a sigh across the ridges, there are forests that do not rush. Their trees do not bloom quickly or grow tall in a single season. Instead, they wait. They stretch slowly. They live in a time that is not ours. While we measure life in hours and days, these trees measure it in centuries. They speak in the quiet creak of wood expanding in summer, in the gentle pull of roots through rock, in the slow shift of shadow across the forest floor. They are not still. They are simply moving in a rhythm too slow for us to see. In the White Mountains of California, the bristlecone pines have stood for nearly 5,000 years. Their trunks are twisted by time, bark worn thin by storms, but their hearts remain alive. These trees have seen the rise and fall of empires, the shifting of stars, the coming and going of species. They are older than our oldest buildings, older than our oldest stories. And still they grow, just a few centimeters each year, carving their place into the mountain stone grain by grain, breath by breath. They do not hurry, they do not stop. This is the secret of trees. They are always moving, but their pace is so slow that we forget to notice. A seedling breaks through soil and bends toward the light. A sapling leans into the wind and thickens its bark. A branch stretches just a little further each spring. To the tree, each action is deliberate. Each turn is a memory, a decision made in response to warmth, to water, to the gentle touch of sun. And over time, these choices become shape, twisted trunks, leaning limbs, roots that curl and reach. Every tree holds the history of its own becoming. Even the roots, unseen below the surface, trace the long memory of place. They twist around stone, dive toward deeper water, or braid themselves with other roots to hold steady in shifting soil. In groves where trees share a single root system, like the Great Pando aspen colony in Utah, the forest becomes one organism, a colony that has lived for thousands of years, sprouting new trunks while old ones fall. Walking through it feels like walking through time itself, each tree a generation, each leaf a breath in an endless cycle of growth and return. Time for trees is not measured in moments. It is measured in rings, each one a soft echo of a season lived. If you were to cut through the trunk of a tree, which we rarely should, you would find its memory written in circles. Wide rings mark years of rain and abundance. Thin rings speak of drought, fire, frost. These rings are not just history, they are resilience. Proof that the tree endured, that it bent but did not break, that it lived slowly, bravely, one layer at a time. Some trees migrate, not in the way animals do, but in generations. A single tree drops its seeds just a short distance from its trunk. Those seeds grow into saplings, which then drop seeds of their own. Over centuries, the forest slowly shifts its edge, responding to climate, to light, to elevation. This movement is so gentle, so spread out across time, that it seems like the forest is still. But it is not. It is walking, just not on feet. On roots, on wind, on the soft steps of falling seeds carried by birds and breeze. In tropical rainforests, some trees grow buttress roots, wide, thin sheets of wood that brace them against the shifting ground. These roots not only support the tree but also help it absorb nutrients in the shallow soil. Over decades, they grow outward, reshaping the forest floor, claiming space as if spreading their arms. In mangrove forests, trees grow stilt-like roots that rise and fall with the tides. They do not fight the sea. They move with it. Each tide leaves a trace. Each wave teaches the tree how to stand again. And in boreal forests where cold rules the land, trees slow their growth to match the silence. In winters that stretch for months, they hold their breath. Their needles do not fall. Their sap thickens like honey. They do not bloom in haste when spring returns. They ease back into life, slowly, softly, as if remembering what warmth feels like before committing to it fully. This patience is not weakness. It is wisdom. Everywhere you look, trees are responding. They do not sleep through the world, they listen to it. Through their roots, they sense the shift of minerals. Through their leaves, they feel the change in light. Through their trunks, they store the echo of storms. And through it all, they grow, not quickly, but with purpose. A purpose so slow it looks like stillness. But it is movement. It is motion stretched over time like a thread pulled gently by the wind. So the next time you stand beneath a tree, take a breath. Imagine the decades it took for that branch to stretch above you. Imagine the storms it has heard, the winters it has survived, the songs the birds have sung in its limbs. It is not just a plant. It is a timeline, a story of life unfolding slowly, gently beneath the sky. Let us now move deeper into this slow world, where the passing of time feels like the quiet unfolding of a leaf. In temperate forests, where seasons change in a predictable rhythm, trees have learned to mark time not with clocks but with color. As summer wanes and the sun sinks lower in the sky, trees begin to draw the nutrients from their leaves, storing them deep in their roots and trunks. What is left behind is pigment, the fiery reds, the soft golds, the deep oranges we see in autumn. But this is not decoration. It is transition. It is memory. The tree is preparing for stillness. It is not dying. It is remembering how to wait. Each leaf that falls is part of the clock. The ground beneath the tree softens with their presence, becoming richer with every season. The tree sheds not to forget but to preserve, to rest, to endure. And when the last leaf drops and the first frost kisses the bark, the tree enters a kind of sleep. But even then it is not inactive. Deep within, it listens to the cold. It listens for the return of warmth. And when spring arrives, it does not burst open. It stretches slowly, testing the air, unfurling buds with the caution of one who remembers what it is to be burned by frost. There are trees in tropical regions that do not shed their leaves all at once but drop them gradually, one by one, in response to rainfall, sunlight, and the quiet messages carried by the wind. These trees do not follow a calendar. They follow the rhythm of their environment. Some drop leaves during droughts to conserve water. Some bloom out of season to take advantage of brief moments of abundance. These are decisions made not with thought, but with sensitivity. The tree feels the shift before it can be seen. It remembers the weight of past seasons and moves accordingly. In cities where concrete surrounds the roots and light is filtered through glass and shadow, trees grow differently. Their limbs lean toward the open sky, their roots search for cracks in the pavement, their bark thickens against pollution and heat. And yet they persist. They adapt. A tree that grows between buildings may take twice as long to reach the same height as one in a forest, but it will reach. Its rings will be tighter, its memory more compact, but still it will tell a story of survival, of slow, patient strength. Some trees are known to close their stomata, the tiny pores on their leaves when danger is sensed, not just in moments of drought but when they hear the sound of insects chewing nearby. This reaction is not panic, it is preparedness. The tree remembers the taste of loss and adjusts before it comes again, and this memory is not only for itself. Through underground root systems and airborne signals, it shares this alert with others nearby, a warning passed in the quiet of breath and breeze. In Japan, ancient cherry trees have been tended for generations. They bloom each spring in a wave of pale pink, their petals drifting like snow. But beneath that beauty is a deep resilience. These trees have lived through war, earthquake, and fire, and still they bloom, not out of habit but out of deep-rooted persistence. Each blossom is the result of years of patient growth, of roots spreading unseen, of bark thickening in silence, of branches slowly finding the best light. The moment of bloom is brief, but the preparation is long. It is a celebration not just of spring, but of endurance. High in the Himalayas, there are juniper trees that grow where almost nothing else can. Their trunks are twisted by wind, their needles stiff with cold. They grow so slowly that one might think they are frozen in time, but they are not. They are gathering strength, cell by cell, layer by layer, holding the mountain together with their roots. And when snow falls and covers them entirely, they do not resist. They yield, they bend, they wait. And when the thaw comes, they rise again, having moved barely at all, but always enough. In African savannas, baobab trees swell with water during the rainy season, storing it within their vast trunks to survive the long, dry months. They are not just growing, they are planning. Their size is not for pride but for preservation. Their hollow centers can shelter animals. Their bark can be stripped and regrown. They are trees of memory, of utility, of wisdom written in water. Each wrinkle in their trunk is a line in a story of adaptation. And everywhere, trees leave behind more than leaves. They change the soil, filling it with the chemistry of their roots. They change the air, filtering it with each breath. They shape the wind, split the light, offer food and shade and silence. They do not rush. They do not demand. They simply continue, slowly, gently, through war and peace, through storm and calm, through the turning of time itself. So the next time you walk through a forest or pass a tree in your neighborhood, look again. See the trunk not as wood but as time made visible. See the leaves not as decoration but as dialogue with the sun. And see the roots, though you cannot see them, as the slow feet of a being that has walked across generations, one breath, one ring, one season at a time. Now let us stand still with the trees in this last part of their story, where motion becomes memory and memory becomes form. In every forest there are elders, trees so large and ancient that they seem to carry the weight of the land itself. Their branches stretch like arms grown heavy with the passing of centuries. Birds build homes in the same crooks year after year, and moss softens the bark that has weathered hundreds of storms. These giants have become more than trees. They are monuments of patience. They are quiet record keepers, holding time not in ink or stone, but in fiber and breath. The science of dendrochronology, the study of tree rings, reveals how trees remember the world. Each ring marks a year. Wide rings show wet seasons when rain was generous and growth came easy. Thin rings show hardship, drought, cold, fire. Some rings carry scars, dark lines where lightning struck or insects burrowed deep. But the tree does not forget. It does not erase. It grows around its pain, and in doing so it teaches us that healing is not hiding but integrating. That survival is not the absence of harm, but the steady act of becoming more than what happened. In old-growth forests, where trees have stood for thousands of years, the entire ecosystem becomes an echo of their rhythm. The light filters through their canopy in waves that shift slowly throughout the day, guiding understory plants to bloom in brief windows of sunlight. The fallen leaves decompose in layers, feeding fungi that in turn feed the trees. Birds sing in patterns that follow the rise and fall of the branches. Even the wind changes as it moves through the forest, slowed, softened, shaped by the slow architecture of trunks and limbs. And then there are the fallen. A tree that dies does not disappear. It becomes nursewood, its trunk feeding moss, mushrooms, insects, and young saplings. In the decay there is still movement, still story. A rotting log holds more life than many living things. Inside it, 1,000 small lives begin. And often the roots of a new tree grow right through the heartwood of the old. It is not an ending. It is a handing over, a slow inheritance written in wood. In northern forests, where winters stretch long and the snow falls heavy, trees have adapted in silence. Their branches angle downward to shed weight. Their needles remain narrow to reduce moisture loss. Their growth slows to match the rhythm of the freeze. Some trees can stop growing for years, waiting out cold spells, then resume as if no time had passed. Others send out clones through underground runners, mirror trees growing nearby, genetically identical to their parent. And in this quiet multiplication, the forest thickens, changes, remembers itself again and again. Some scientists now study tree memory not just in rings, but in genes. Epigenetics shows that trees can pass on the memory of drought or frost to their offspring, not through spoken teaching, but through subtle changes in the way their DNA is read. A seed born of hardship may grow with greater resilience, its leaves thicker, its roots deeper. It is a kind of silent wisdom, a memory that lives beyond one lifetime. And in this way, the forest becomes a classroom with no walls, no teacher, only time. In cities where trees live shorter, harder lives, this memory still persists. A street tree grows surrounded by noise and concrete. Its roots are confined, its trunk scraped by cars, its branches trimmed by human hands. Yet even here it remembers how to grow. It finds light between buildings. It stretches toward sound. And in the narrow strip of soil allowed to it, it drops its leaves, feeds the soil, welcomes birds. Even in struggle, it moves forward, slow and brave. Even without a forest around it, it holds the forest inside. And what of us? We rush through our days, marking time in blinking screens and ticking clocks, forgetting that there is another rhythm, a deeper one, the rhythm of trees, the rhythm of rings, of roots, of winds that move so slowly we can only feel them when we pause long enough to notice. In that stillness, we may begin to hear what trees have always known, that there is power in patience, that life is not a sprint but a stretch, that strength comes not from speed but from staying. When we plant a tree, we do not plant for ourselves alone. We plant for children we may never meet, for forests we may never walk, for a future that grows in circles we cannot see. A tree is a promise written in shadow and leaf, in bark and breath. It is the slowest kind of hope, and perhaps the most enduring. So let us not just look at trees. Let us learn from them. Let us move through time with more softness. Let us stretch gently into the spaces we wish to fill. Let us root deeply where we choose to stand. And let us remember that even when the world feels fast and loud, beneath our feet and above our heads, there is a wisdom that walks slowly through time, teaching us that to grow is to remember, and to remember is to live. Beneath the softness of a meadow, beneath the cracks in a cliff face, and even beneath the stone steps of forgotten ruins, something is always reaching. It does not roar or rise quickly. It does not strike with force. It reaches slowly, gently, carefully. A root. a tender thread of life emerging from a seed so small it might be missed in a handful of dust. And yet this root will change the land. It will find its way into the crevices of rock, through grains of soil, into spaces where nothing else dares to go. This is how plants begin to claim the earth, not through power but through patience. It starts with a single point, a seed waking up. It listens to moisture, to warmth, to the press of soil around it. And then it sends a root downward, not to conquer but to explore. That first root doesn't burst through the ground. It curves, it tastes, it touches, it decides. And where it finds space, it presses gently in. It may be only a millimeter long, but it is already changing its surroundings. It displaces soil particles. It pulls in water. It begins to build a network. And every cell it adds becomes a path forward. As the root grows, it secretes tiny amounts of acids and enzymes, not to damage but to soften what lies ahead. Even stone is not immune. Over time, the root's presence opens microscopic gaps in rock. It creates space where there was none. It invites in air, moisture, microbes. It is not alone for long. Bacteria arrive, fungi thread themselves nearby, and soon the root is part of a growing community. All of this happens in silence, in darkness, yet it changes everything above. Above ground, a sprout appears. It is fragile. It bends in the wind. But below, the root is anchoring, stretching, claiming land not in feet or meters but in moments of decision. A turn here to avoid dryness. A deeper press there toward hidden water. This is the mind of the plant, not in thought but in direction. Every movement below ground is a quiet declaration. I belong here. I will stay. Over time, the root branches. It sends out tendrils. Each new rootlet explores in a slightly different direction, creating a map of the underground. And through this map, the plant begins to claim the space around it. It does not fight for it. It fills it. Its roots touch rock and soften it. They wrap around pebbles and slowly shift them. They follow tiny veins of moisture, leaving behind trails of organic matter that make the soil richer. This is how land becomes fertile, not through sudden change, but through long, slow presence. In harsh places, high cliffs, desert sands, volcanic slopes, plants begin in the smallest cracks. A moss takes hold where dew collects in morning light. A fern finds shelter in a crevice where a bird once dropped a seed. Their roots cling with determination, sending out tiny hairs that grab onto the smallest grains. These roots do not need much. A bit of mineral, a trace of water, the memory of a rain that passed long ago. And still they grow. Still they make a home. As more plants arrive, the land changes. The first roots break down stone into particles. The next add organic matter. Fungi arrive and connect the roots underground. Over years, maybe centuries, what was once bare becomes covered in green. Not all at once, but slowly. Through roots remembering which way to grow. Through seeds falling in the right place. Through time folding itself into soil. In some places, roots move horizontally, weaving through the top layers of soil, claiming space inch by inch. In others, they dive deep, drawing up water that no surface plant could reach. Some roots form thick taproots, anchoring the plant through storms and heat. Others grow in a fine mat, catching every drop of rain. These shapes are not random. They are the plant's response to land, to climate, to the quiet rules written into the earth. And still, this claiming is not violent. The root does not take more than it needs. It does not trample. It fits itself to the land. It learns its curves, its dryness, its hardness. It adapts. A single plant may live in a crack for decades, its roots winding deeper year by year until the rock is reshaped by its touch. Not broken, transformed. This is how the world turns green, not through conquest but through quiet determination. Through millions of roots pressing forward each day, unseen, unnoticed, but powerful. Each one whispering to the soil, I am here. I am part of you. And in that whisper, land becomes life. Now let us follow those roots as they continue their silent expansion, shaping not only the land beneath them but the life above. When a root system grows wide enough, it changes the temperature of the soil. It shades the surface with leaves above, keeping moisture from vanishing too quickly. It slows the wind, softens the rain, and even draws animals toward its shelter. A plant that holds the land does not do so with walls or fences. It does it by making the place better, for itself, for others, for the future. The root claims space by improving it. Some roots begin to speak chemically. They release signals into the soil, calling for help, offering warnings, forming relationships. These signals are not random. They are part of the root's language. A bean plant, for example, invites special bacteria to live in tiny nodules on its roots. These bacteria take nitrogen from the air and turn it into something the plant can use. In return, the plant gives them sugar. It's not a transaction. It's a partnership, a shared survival. And as this root partnership continues, the soil becomes richer, not just for the bean, but for any plant that follows. Other roots go further. The roots of grasses knit together so tightly that they hold entire prairies in place. They prevent erosion, absorb floods, and resist droughts. They are like threads in a great underground fabric stretched across thousands of miles. These roots don't just claim the land. They stabilize it. They protect it. And when fire sweeps through, as it does in many grasslands, the tops may burn, but the roots wait below, alive and ready, remembering where to grow again. In forests, tree roots press deep into the earth, some spreading wider than the tree's crown above. They push into old soil layers, finding ancient minerals, breaking down rocks that have not been touched in ages. And as they do, they change the chemical makeup of the soil. They draw in elements that support not only trees but fungi, moss, insects, and the generations of new life that follow. A single tree's roots can create a microclimate, cooling the air, raising the humidity, even influencing the way clouds form overhead. The act of claiming land through roots is never selfish. It is generative. Consider the mangrove tree, whose tangled roots rise from salty water like fingers reaching for air. These roots do not only support the tree, they build entire ecosystems. Fish lay eggs in the safety of their shadows. Crabs dig tunnels among their anchors. Birds perch above, knowing the land beneath is rich. And over time, the roots trap sediment, building new ground where once there was only water. This is land making, not by machine or by force, but by root, slow, tangled, persistent. Even in the most unexpected places, abandoned sidewalks, crumbling walls, ruins of cities long forgotten, roots find a way. A fig tree grows from the side of a temple, its roots wrapping stone like arms. A weed breaks through pavement, its hair-thin root pressing down into forgotten dust. These roots do not seek attention. They seek opportunity, a crack, a drop of water, a place to begin. And once they do not let go. Over years, they split stone, lift bricks, soften concrete. Not with anger, with patience. There is a quiet power in this kind of claiming, a resilience that does not shout. Every time a plant sends a root into soil, it is creating a future where water is held a little longer, where life can return more easily, where something green can take hold. In deserts, roots grow deep, some as much as 60 meters into the ground, to find hidden water. In rainforests, they grow shallow and wide, catching every drop of rain before it disappears. The root listens to the land and grows accordingly. It does not impose its will, it responds. Roots also change the way land feels. In a garden tended by generations, the soil becomes soft, dark, rich with history. Every root that grows and dies leaves behind a tunnel, a space for air and water. Earthworms follow these paths. Fungi thrive in them. And so, with each growing season, the soil remembers its life. It becomes easier to grow in, easier to stay in. This is not just soil, it is legacy. There are even roots that float, like the aerial roots of orchids and banyan trees. These roots do not grow down. They grow outward, downward, sideways, wherever they must to find light, to find support. Some drop from branches into the ground, growing into new trunks. Over time, what began as one tree becomes a forest of itself. These roots are not confined. They are exploratory. They reshape their surroundings not by taking over, but by becoming part of everything around them. Roots do not always grow in solitude. In some places, roots from many different species overlap and intertwine. They do not compete as we often imagine. Instead, they share. They send signals, they pass water, they offer support. And through these actions, they make the land more welcoming for all. This is how plants claim land together, not as rivals but as companions, each one adding its own thread to the tapestry of the earth. So when you look at a patch of ground, bare or blooming, remember that the story beneath is always longer than it appears. Roots have been there, writing into the earth, shaping it with every breathless movement. And as they do not ask for ownership. They ask only to belong, and in that belonging they shape the world. Let us now follow the final stretch of this story, where roots have not only claimed land but made it something new. What begins as a thin thread pressing into darkness becomes, over years, a force that transforms entire landscapes. Hills once bare become covered in moss and fern. Valleys fill with grass and wildflower. Stone becomes soil. Dust becomes bloom. This transformation is not sudden. It is written in the daily persistence of roots, stretching, splitting, softening, settling. They do not rise above the earth to claim it. They move through it, shaping it gently from within. On the slopes of volcanoes where fire once poured down in rivers of ash, the first life to return is not loud or bright. It is lichens and mosses, sending down tiny root-like structures into blackened stone. These structures, so delicate, so easy to overlook, begin the long work of healing. They trap dust, they gather moisture, and as they decay, they leave behind fragments of life that nourish the next generation. Then come grasses with fine roots that grip the ash and hold it steady. Then shrubs. Then trees. A forest may take centuries to return, but it will come, step by step, root by root. Coastal dunes, where the wind reshapes the land daily and the sand shifts like breath. There are plants with roots that hold everything still. Marram grass with its long, fibrous roots traps the blowing sand and builds stable ground. These roots do not go deep, they go wide, weaving a net that catches each grain. Without them, the dunes would drift endlessly. With them, land takes form, creatures find shelter. Soil begins to form from sand. It is not a wall or a dam that secures the dune. It is a root. Even in alpine environments where rock dominates and snow lingers into summer, roots find a way. Cushion plants grow low to the ground, their roots spreading in shallow mats to catch the tiniest warmth from the sun. These roots do more than feed the plant. They trap fine particles of soil, provide warmth for insects, and make cracks in the stone just wide enough for others to follow. In these high places, every inch of land is earned, and it is earned with time, tenderness, and tenacity. Some of the oldest plants on Earth, like creosote bushes in deserts or clonal colonies of trembling aspen, don't just grow roots, they become roots. A single organism spread underground across acres, sprouting new stems above while maintaining one ancient body below. These plants don't live for decades. They live for thousands of years, not because they resist change, but because they embrace it slowly. A root dies here, a new shoot rises there. The land changes, and so do they, always anchored, always adapting. In wetlands, roots do more than support. They filter, they clean. They remove toxins from the water, process waste, and create safe habitat for birds and fish. A reed does not look like a hero, but its roots purify what passes through. A cypress tree growing in a swamp might seem still, but its roots lift and lower with the flood, helping the entire wetland breathe. These roots don't just claim land, they make land livable. As roots grow, they leave behind legacies that outlive the plants themselves. A fallen tree's roots, once exposed, form shelters for animals. Old root channels become homes for insects, tunnels for rainwater, paths for new growth. In ecosystems untouched by machines, the soil is often rich with these remnants, proof that the land has been loved and shaped not by force, but by generations of quiet roots. There are places in the world where ancient paths of roots can still be traced. In deserts where a forest once stood, fossilized root channels remain etched into the earth. In jungles, massive buttress roots rise like sculptures, telling stories of stability in the face of monsoon and storm. In grasslands, thin taproots punch downward toward water tables, forming living memory of seasons long past. Every one of these is a signature, a record. A gentle declaration that something once grew here and claimed this place with grace. This is not just about survival, it is about presence. Roots do not run, they stay. They do not flee from difficulty, they adapt to it. Their resilience is not loud, but it is complete. Where they are cut, they regrow. Where they are challenged, they curve. Where they are limited, they find space. Every turn, every fork, every fine hair that reaches for water is an act of listening and answering. And so the land is not taken, it is invited. It is taught how to hold life again. The plants do not conquer the soil, they teach it, they prepare it, they become one with it. A field, a forest, a mountain meadow, all of these are stories written by roots in a language of time, a language of return, a language of belonging. So if you ever find yourself in a quiet place, far from roads or buildings, and you see a single plant growing in the crack of a boulder or clinging to the edge of a cliff, pause for a moment. That root is not just surviving, it is transforming. It is claiming that space with love, with slowness, with the deep and ancient belief that even the hardest places can become home. That is the way roots grow. That is the way land is truly claimed, not with flags or fences, but with patience, presence, and peace. Beneath the surface of the ground, where light does not reach and silence hangs like dew, plants are always listening. Not just for water, not only for light, but for the breath of the earth itself. The soil is not still. It moves, it shifts, it exhales. With every rise in pressure, every drop in temperature, every sigh of wind above, the ground responds. And the plants, still and rooted though they seem, feel it. They do not have ears to hear or lungs to breathe. But in the tiny pores of their leaves, in the fine hairs of their roots, in the shifting dance of their cells, they are listening to the breath of the world. This breath is made of more than just air. It is a tide of moisture, carbon, minerals, and temperature. It pulses through the soil like a quiet rhythm. In the early morning, the ground is cool and damp. Plants open their stomata, their tiny breathing mouths on the underside of leaves, to take in carbon dioxide and let out oxygen. It is the beginning of the daily exchange. The sun rises. Light filters through branches. Photosynthesis begins. But this process is not mechanical. It is responsive. Plants change their breath depending on the world around them. Too much light and they guard their pores. Not enough and they open wider, drawing in all they can. In forests, this breathing becomes communal. Thousands of leaves open and close in patterns shaped by sun and shade, by mist and movement. A canopy of trees is more than branches and leaves. It is a lung. It inhales carbon, exhales oxygen, and filters the very sky. Beneath that canopy, the air feels different, cooler, richer, softer, because the plants are shaping it with every breath. And below the trees, smaller plants adjust their own rhythms to the filtered light and dappled warmth. Each breath is tuned to place. The roots, too, participate in this dialogue. They breathe in the dark, not with lungs but with slow chemical exchange. Oxygen seeps into the soil through tiny air pockets, feeding the cells of roots. Carbon dioxide rises up. Some plants in flooded or compacted soils struggle to breathe underground, and so they adapt. Mangroves send up aerial roots like snorkels, drawing oxygen from above. Wetland plants form parenchyma, spongy tissues that carry air from leaves down to roots. These adaptations are not accidents. They are the plant's way of matching breath to the shape of land and water. Even the direction a plant grows can be influenced by breath. Roots grow toward areas of higher oxygen. Shoots turn to face the light. This is not just movement, it is sensing. A seedling in the dark will twist and bend until it finds the faintest touch of light. A root will slow or accelerate depending on the gases it encounters in the soil. Each shift, each turn, is a response to the atmosphere, a silent answer to the planet's exhale. In high-altitude regions where the air is thinner and colder, plants adjust their breathing accordingly. Their stomata may open for shorter periods, conserving moisture while still taking in enough carbon to survive. Alpine flowers bloom quickly, making the most of the brief summer before the air cools again. Their breath is fast, efficient, shaped by the pressure of the sky. In deserts, the breath changes once more. Some plants, like cacti and succulents, open their stomata at night to avoid losing water in the heat. This reversed rhythm, called cam photosynthesis, is the plant's way of breathing in time with the desert's slow pulse. The breath of the earth is also seasonal. In spring, as temperatures rise and snow melts, the soil softens and exhales a rich scent, earthy, warm, alive. Plants respond by waking from dormancy. Buds swell, leaves unfurl, roots grow with new hunger. In autumn, as the days shorten and the air cools, plants begin to slow their breath. They draw back into themselves. Their leaves change color not out of sadness, but as a signal of this slow retreat. Their breath becomes shallow, steady, preparing for winter's stillness. There is beauty in this invisible exchange. The breath of plants does not rise in clouds. It does not shimmer or sing, but it is always there. It shapes the world around us. Forests that trap carbon, fields that release oxygen, roots that change the composition of air in the soil. It is not just life, it is a rhythm that connects all life. Some scientists now use special tools to measure the breathing of plants. They can track the opening and closing of stomata, the flow of gases, the pulse of photosynthesis. They can see how quickly a forest responds to heat, how a crop field adjusts to wind. But even without instruments, we can feel it. Walk through a grove at dawn and breathe. The air is sweeter. It holds the scent of leaves just opening. Sit in a field at dusk. The air feels stiller, denser. The plants have begun to close for the night. All around us, plants are breathing with the earth, not copying it, not ignoring it, but harmonizing with it. Their breath is a song with no sound, a dance with no steps, a prayer made of light and air. And in that breath, they are not alone. We breathe it too. Let us go even deeper into the quiet breathwork of the earth, where plants are not only listeners but translators. Every shift in the air is received and transformed, not just into sugars and growth, but into messages, reactions, changes that ripple across ecosystems. When one tree opens its stomata to breathe, it's not just feeding itself. It's contributing to the atmosphere, shaping the microclimate, and participating in the invisible conversation of life. Plants are the lungs of the land, and their every breath makes the air more livable for us all. But their breath is more than survival, it is perception, a way of sensing the world around them without needing to move from their place. The breath of the earth changes not just from moment to moment, but from place to place. In dense forests, the air is rich with moisture and shadow. In open fields, it is dry and quick-moving. Plants adjust to these differences with quiet grace. In moist environments, leaves are thinner, broader, ready to release moisture through transpiration. In dry regions, leaves shrink or curl or take on waxy skins. These are not just defenses, they are decisions. Breath is not automatic, it is chosen. A cactus that breathes only at night is not delaying. It is listening to the silence of the desert and responding in kind. At night, the breathing pattern of plants reverses. With no sunlight to fuel photosynthesis, they stop taking in carbon dioxide and begin releasing it instead as respiration continues. But even this nighttime breath is measured. Some plants slow almost to stillness in darkness. Others use the quiet to process what the day gave them, converting sugars, releasing scents, preparing for the next sunrise. Night is not rest, it is transformation. The breath of night is deeper, slower, hidden, but no less vital. Some plants breathe together, almost in synchrony. In fields of sunflowers or crops of wheat, the entire field inhales and exhales as one. Stomata open in response to rising humidity or falling pressure, and the surrounding air cools as water evaporates from leaves. This is not coordinated by thought, but by shared environment. The breath of one becomes the breath of many. And animals sense this too. Birds prefer the edge of forests where the air shifts. Insects follow scent trails born from leaf vapor. Even we, unknowingly, are drawn to the freshness beneath trees, to the sweet breath of a flowering meadow. Some plants use breath to send messages. When a leaf is chewed by an insect, it doesn't simply heal, it releases volatile compounds into the air. These tiny chemical whispers travel to nearby leaves and neighboring plants, warning them to prepare. The breath becomes a signal. Leaves thicken, toxins increase. The plant has not only felt damage, it has communicated it. Some of these messages travel long distances, carried on wind currents, drifting into the awareness of others like the scent of rain on dry earth. In swamps and marshes, the breath of plants becomes a struggle against saturation. Roots need oxygen, but waterlogged soils are suffocating. So plants like rice and cattails develop internal airways, hollow tubes that funnel oxygen from the leaves above to the roots below. These structures, invisible from the outside, are like internal lungs, breathing against the pressure of mud and flood. The plant does not panic. It adapts. Its breath deepens. Its structure shifts. The Earth's breath is not always gentle. Storms bring sudden drops in pressure, waves of heat, jolts of cold. And plants feel these moments in their cells. Some close their stomata to prepare. Others release stress chemicals to signal nearby companions. After a lightning strike, trees increase their defense compounds, not just at the wound but in distant leaves. Even the roots may shift their patterns, growing away from perceived stress zones. Plants do not scream, but their breath becomes sharper, more guarded until the danger passes. And in places where air is thin or polluted, plants still try to breathe. In cities, leaves are coated with dust, their stomata clogged by soot. Yet still they open, still they filter. Urban trees, despite all their challenges, pull carbon from the atmosphere, release oxygen, and cool the surrounding air. Studies show that a single tree on a street corner can drop the temperature of the block, clean harmful gases, and support dozens of tiny creatures. Its breath is heavier here, but it breathes all the same. The breath of plants even affects the clouds. Forests release water vapor during transpiration, adding humidity to the air. In large enough numbers, these vapors rise, cool, condense, and become rain. A rainforest is not just a receiver of storms, it is a maker of them. The forest breathes water into the sky, and the sky returns it in drops. This cycle, known as the biotic pump, is one of the planet's great rhythms. And it is driven by breath, millions of leaves opening and closing in quiet harmony. We often think of breathing as personal, as intimate, but plants show us that it is also shared. Every breath a tree takes shapes the world around it. Every breath a meadow releases carries a message, a gift, a change. And though they do not have lungs, their ability to feel the breath of the earth is no less profound than ours, perhaps even more so. For they do not breathe with intention, they breathe with presence. They are always aware of the air, the light, the soil. They are always adjusting, always listening. To feel the breath of the earth is to belong to it, to shape it gently with each exhale, to respond, not react, to root, not run. And that is what plants do every moment of every day. They feel the world's breath, and in return they breathe it back, cleaner, cooler, calmer, alive. Now let us linger with this breath in the stillest part of the day, where the wind has calmed and the sun hangs low, and the world exhales in one slow, steady sigh. In this quiet, the plants continue their listening. Their leaves adjust their angles to gather the final rays of light. Their stomata begin to close gently, as if lowering the windows for the night. The breath of the earth slows and the plants move with it, not hurried, not forced, but in harmony. This is what it means to be rooted in place, to be part of the world's rhythm, not apart from it. Even in the smallest garden, this rhythm plays out. A vine climbs a trellis, sensing the warmth of the sunlit side. Its tendrils curl not just around the wood, but toward the breath of air that moves through open space. Roots below ground spread not in straight lines, but in slow spirals, navigating the softness of moist soil, avoiding dryness, listening for the mineral scent of nourishment. A flower opens just after dawn, not by command but by breath, the rise of temperature, the drift of light, the stirring of bees. Everything moves together, even when nothing seems to move at all. Some of the oldest plants on Earth, like cycads and ginkgo trees, have been breathing this way for millions of years. Their patterns have changed little because they already listen so well. They have survived ice ages and fire, flood and famine simply by responding to the Earth's whisper, not resisting it, not overpowering it, but flowing with it. The secret to their survival lies not in size or speed, but in attention, in breath awareness, in the ability to feel change before it becomes crisis. In underwater forests, those vast meadows of kelp swaying beneath the sea, Plants feel the ocean's breath as currents and tides. Sunlight filters through waves and the kelp stretches toward it. Nutrients rise and fall with the rhythm of the deep, and the kelp moves with it, absorbing what it needs without leaving its anchor. Though it is submerged, though it has no lungs, the kelp breathes. It transforms carbon into life. It releases oxygen into the ocean. It builds habitat for fish and seals and drifting creatures. And all of this happens through breath, silent, slow, and essential. Breathing is also memory. Plants remember the patterns of the air. A tree exposed to long drought remembers to open its stomata more cautiously the following season. A plant that has survived heat will keep its breath shorter and its pores smaller. These are not thoughts but cellular memories, tiny changes written into the way the plant responds. Scientists call it priming, a kind of preparation for what might come. But for the plant, it is simply adaptation. To breathe is to know the world. To remember is to breathe better. There are stories of people planting trees along city streets and noticing over time that the air feels different, not just cooler but calmer. Hospitals with garden courtyards report faster healing. Schools with green space show better attention in students. These effects are not magic, they are breath deep. Plants shape the air and we live inside that shaping. When we breathe near a plant, we are breathing something that has been softened by life, cleaned by photosynthesis, enriched by the quiet generosity of a leaf. In large ecosystems, the breath of plants drives entire climates. The Amazon rainforest, with its endless trees and vines and undergrowth, generates so much moisture through transpiration that it creates its own weather systems. The forest rains on itself. Its breath becomes cloud, its cloud becomes rain, and the cycle begins again. Without this breath, the forest would collapse, the rivers would dry, the sky would change, but because of the breath, everything holds. When plants die, their breath lingers. The air beneath a fallen tree still smells of life. The soil where roots once were still holds their shape. The memories of their breathing patterns live on in the seeds they dropped, in the cuttings that grow anew, in the air that feels just a bit more welcoming. Even decay is a kind of breath, a return, a giving back, a final exhale that feeds the next inhale of something new. And in this endless loop we find ourselves. We breathe in what the plants breathe out. They take what we release. This is the truest partnership. It needs no words, no agreements. It is old, sacred, constant. Our lives depend on the silent work of roots and leaves, on the invisible rhythm of breath that never stops, even while we sleep. So the next time you find yourself standing beneath a tree or brushing your fingers through the leaves of a houseplant, pause, feel the air. It is not empty. It is alive with story. The plant has shaped it. The earth has moved through it. And your own breath is part of it now. You are not apart from the land. You are breathing with it. And somewhere, a root feels that change and grows. Deep within the hush of the forest, where light trickles down through 100 layers of leaf and shadow, small architects are always at work. They do not build with hammers or measure with rulers. They do not lay stone or carve wood. Instead, they build with silence, with touch, with time. These are the mosses, the lichens, the fungi, the forest's softest architects. Barely seen, often overlooked, yet always shaping the world beneath our feet and above our heads. Their buildings are not grand, but they last. Their work is not loud, but it sustains all life around them. It begins with moss, the first to arrive on bare stone or disturbed soil. Moss does not ask for much. A little moisture, a quiet place, a patch of shade. It anchors with threads so fine they can slip between grains of sand. It grows not to compete but to hold, to keep soil from washing away, to catch rain and hold it like a sponge. It softens surfaces, cools the air, and welcomes life, tiny insects, beetles, even seeds carried by the wind. In this soft green layer, the forest finds its first cushion. And then come the lichens, part fungus, part algae, living together in perfect harmony. They bloom on bark, on rock, on fallen logs, painting the forest with patches of silver, orange, and pale green. These lichens are not decoration, they are transformation. Their acids break down stone into dust, their bodies collect nutrients from the wind, and their presence signals that the air is clean. A tree covered in lichen is not sick, it is thriving. It is host to a network of architects who are slowly turning wood into shelter, light into food, stillness into life. Beneath it all, hidden in the soil, the greatest architects are at work, the fungi. Not the mushrooms we see above ground, but the mycelium below, stretching for miles in delicate threads. This web connects trees and shrubs, grasses and ferns, linking root to root in a vast, silent network. Through it, the forest speaks. Nutrients flow, warnings pass, messages drift through molecules. And with each passing year, the network grows stronger, thicker, more intelligent. It is not a machine. It is a mind made of softness, of breath, of becoming. These soft architects do not stand tall, but they shape the giants. A tree's roots grow differently depending on the fungi they host. Its growth is faster, its resilience stronger. A young seedling growing near a mossy patch is more likely to survive. The moss keeps the soil cool, the lichen draws moisture, the fungi feed its roots. This is not coincidence. This is cooperation. Architecture not of buildings but of systems, alive, connected, and always evolving. In fallen logs, these builders thrive. Moss covers the surface, keeping it moist. Fungi dig deep, breaking the wood into threads. Lichens spread across the bark, holding what remains. And as the log softens, insects arrive. Then beetles, then salamanders, then birds searching for shelter. Eventually, the log becomes soil, not destroyed but transformed. It is a building that has become a cradle for the next generation. All of it shaped by quiet hands that never needed to be seen. Even fire cannot stop them. After a burn, when the forest is charred and silent, moss is the first to return. It grows from ashes, drawing dew, preparing the ground for what comes next. Fungi break down the dead, releasing nutrients locked in blackened trunks. Lichens creep across the cooled stone. These are the first responders, the restorers, the patient hands that rebuild what was lost, one thread, one breath, one season at a time. In alpine meadows and tundra, where wind scours the land and snow lingers well into spring, moss and lichen dominate. They hug the earth closely, forming cushions that trap warmth and slow the cold. Beneath them, roots find shelter. Above them, insects find rest. These small beings shape environments with softness. They are not warriors. They are weavers, holding the world together not with strength but with care. In caves and deep forest hollows, fungi thrive without light. They feed on decay, on memory, on what once was. And in doing so, they make room for what will be. Their fruiting bodies, mushrooms of every shape and color, are only the tip of what lies below. A brief appearance in a long conversation. Most of their life is spent in the soil, connecting, sensing, building. And as they build, they hold the forest's story, not in bark or branch, but in thread and chemistry. These architects do not demand space. They create it. They do not rush. They respond. They do not control. They cooperate. Through them, the forest becomes more than a collection of trees. It becomes a system of breath and balance. A place where even the smallest form shapes the largest lives, and in their softness there is strength. So the next time you walk in the woods and see a mossy stone, a patch of lichen, a hidden mushroom blooming from a log, pause. You are not looking at something small. You are looking at the foundation of the forest, at the hands that hold it up, at the gentle builders who never stop working, never stop listening, and never stop turning silence into shelter. Let us move further into the forest now, into the heart of the architecture that holds it all together. Here, every fallen branch, every shaded rock, every patch of damp ground becomes part of the blueprint. The moss spreads slowly over bark and stone, changing not only color but temperature. Its velvet layer traps moisture, cools surfaces, and buffers the extremes of heat and cold. Tiny seeds fall into this bed and take root more easily, finding shelter in its softness. For the moss, there is no rush. It may take years to spread just a few inches, but it remembers every drop of rain, every breath of fog, and grows with the memory of moisture still in its cells. And while moss lies close to the skin of the world, fungi stretch deep into its bones. The mycelium beneath the forest floor grows in fractals, repeating patterns of thread and branch and split, all shaped by the obstacles it meets. It does not force its way through soil. It follows the path of least resistance, sensing nutrients, sensing life. Where it finds rich matter, it thickens. Where it finds emptiness, it pauses. The entire network breathes, expands, retracts. It is alive not in a single point, but across the whole forest, a web of purpose too delicate for the eye to trace, yet strong enough to nourish trees hundreds of feet tall. In tropical forests, the diversity of these architects multiplies. There are fungi that glow in the dark, painting logs with ghostly green light. There are mosses that trap water like sponges, becoming tiny pools for frogs and insect larvae. There are lichens that absorb metals from the air and clean it as they grow. Some of these organisms exist nowhere else on Earth, perfectly adapted to the climate, to the trees, to the precise breath of humidity and shade. Each one is an architect of microclimates, tiny environments built on the backs of bark and branch, each one a soft room where life unfolds. Animals know this, though we rarely notice. Ants nest inside mosses. Beetles lay eggs beneath lichen crusts. Salamanders rest beneath mushroom caps. A fox curls beneath a fallen tree softened by rot, warmed by the insulation of fungal decay. The forest is not just made for them. It is made by them with the help of these soft builders. It is not a coincidence that life flourishes where moss grows thickest, where mushrooms bloom, where the bark peels gently with lichen living underneath. These are the signs of good architecture, places where nothing is wasted and everything is used again. And in forests under pressure from drought, from human interference, from disease, it is the soft architects who respond first. Fungi sense the chemical stress of trees and begin shifting resources. Mosses shrink in dry years but hold their green in protected corners. Lichens fade slowly, sending signals of poor air long before we notice it ourselves. They do not fight, they adjust, they bend, they endure. And through their subtle changes, they warn us that the architecture is weakening, that something foundational is beginning to shift. In managed forests and gardens, we often forget these builders. We rake the moss, scrub the lichen, clear the fallen logs, cut the mushrooms. We clean what looks messy, forgetting that what we remove is structure. A bare trunk may seem healthy, but without the lichen, it is exposed. A smooth lawn may seem neat, but without moss, it loses its memory of rain. A garden without fungi is less a system and more a display. The architecture we erase is the one that makes life more stable, more layered, more whole. There are ancient relationships here. Some trees cannot survive without their fungal partners. Their seeds will not germinate without the right mycelium nearby. Some plants rely on mosses to hold moisture around their roots. Others grow only in the soft decay built by generations of fungal life. These aren't passive arrangements. They're inherited agreements, older than human memory. When we plant a tree, we must also think of what lies beneath and beside it, the threads that will feed it, the cushions that will hold it, the breath that will pass through its leaves because something tiny and unseen shaped the air. And as we learn more, we begin to imitate these architects in our own designs. Cities now use moss walls to filter air and cool buildings. Mushrooms are being studied for biodegradable materials. Fungal threads are woven into fabrics, turned into packaging, built into bricks. We are beginning to remember that softness can be strength, that smallness can be structure, that the forest has always been building what we now try to invent. In abandoned buildings, nature's architects return first. Lichen finds cracks in walls. Moss grows where water collects on stone. Fungi bloom from beams long forgotten. These pioneers do not need permission. They reclaim space not with force but with breath. They do not erase what was. They write over it with life. And in doing so, they remind us that all structures fade, but life, given time, will build again. So when we walk through the forest and see a rotting log or a wall of moss or a speckled crust of lichen, let us not rush past. Let us pause. Let us kneel. Let us notice the architecture of softness, the buildings made of patience, the rooms that breathe. For in these places the forest is not just surviving, it is designing. It is remembering how to hold itself together, one silent layer at a time. Now let us return to the beginning. The smallest green thread that reached for a stone, the first soft bloom of lichen on bark, the barely visible filaments of fungi weaving through soil, and see how, over time, these quiet forces reshape entire worlds. What began as a dusting of green on rock becomes a garden. What started as a tangle of invisible threads beneath the surface becomes the backbone of a forest. The forest's softest architects do not build for beauty, but their designs are beautiful. They do not build for permanence, but their work endures. Every curve of a moss-covered log, every starburst of fungi beneath the soil, every flake of lichen on a weathered tree is part of a greater pattern, one that holds everything else in place. In the northernmost woods, where cold lingers for most of the year, reindeer moss, actually a lichen, spreads low and wide, feeding herds that move like breath across the tundra. Without it, the animals would starve, the balance would collapse. This lichen doesn't ask for praise. It simply endures, slowly accumulating nutrients, surviving bitter wind and dim light. Its structure is soft, but it outlasts storms. And as it grows, it feeds not only the reindeer but the soil beneath, preparing it for the return of warmth and green. In rainforests where the canopy rises high and sunlight barely touches the ground, fungi make the most of darkness. They recycle everything. A fallen leaf, a dead insect, the bark from a long-lost tree, all of it becomes food, fiber, form. Nothing is wasted. And in this endless recycling, life never pauses. Even decay is movement. Even rot is design. Mushrooms burst forth in strange colors, strange shapes like sculptures from another world. But beneath them lies the true body, the web that connects not only tree to tree but past to future. Some fungi form fruiting bodies only once in many years. They wait beneath the soil, watching, sensing, preparing. Then in a burst of rain and warmth they bloom, not to be admired but to release spores into the air, millions of seeds carried by wind, by insect, by breath. In that moment the forest breathes back, and even though the bloom may last only hours, the impact is lasting. New life begins somewhere else, carried by the quietest hands. Mosses, too, remember. They close when dry, curl in on themselves, holding the memory of the last rainfall. When water returns, they uncurl as if waking from sleep and begin again. No part of them is wasted. Every cell is a sponge. Every surface gathers what it can. On stone walls, on fallen roofs, on the bark of ancient trees, moss finds a foothold and builds without blueprint, forming gentle green mosaics that catch dust, cradle seeds, soften edges. These are not just carpets of nature, they are cradles of resilience. And then there are the architects who go unseen even more completely, the microbes living within the fungi, within the moss, within the lichen, symbionts inside symbionts, each one contributing to the whole. It is a nested structure, a layered intelligence where every element supports another. The forest is not a place of solitary survival. It is a network of dependence, of quiet agreements that say, I will hold you if you hold me. I will build you if you build me. As the forest grows older, its architecture becomes more complex. Young forests are eager, rising fast, thin trunks chasing light. But in an old forest, the work of the soft architects is everywhere. Thick moss cushions the roots of elder trees. Lichens crust the highest branches. Fungi carve pathways through centuries of fallen wood. Nothing stands alone. Every space is occupied, every breath recycled. There is no blueprint except time, no scaffolding but decay, and yet the structure holds. It breathes, it thrives. Even in death, these architects continue their work. A tree falls and becomes nursewood. A stump becomes a new home for moss and fern. A log feeds beetles, which feed birds, which drop seeds that become saplings. The loop never closes. It simply circles back, wider and deeper, shaped by those who need no tools, no titles, no recognition. The moss, the lichen, the fungi, they are not waiting to be seen. They are already busy, already building, already becoming the future. We often look to the tallest trees for inspiration, the grandest branches for beauty. But the forest's foundation is built in layers too small to grasp, too slow to watch. Its strength lies in softness, its survival in collaboration. The more we learn about these architects, the more we realize how much we've missed, not because it was hidden, but because we weren't still enough to notice. Now we are learning to see, To honor the green haze on the stone, the web beneath the roots, the fruiting body that appears overnight and vanishes by morning. These are not signs of age or decay. They are blueprints in motion. They are shelter in progress. They are restoration made visible. And they teach us something not only about the forest but about ourselves. That soft things can be strong. That patience is power. That the smallest acts, repeated faithfully, can hold up the world. So the next time you find yourself walking through a forest, don't look only up. Look down, look beside, look close. The architects are still working, still building, still turning shadow into shelter, silence into strength, and the forgotten into foundation. Somewhere in the soil, resting beneath a layer of fallen leaves and softened by the rhythm of rain, a seed waits. It is small, so small you might carry 100 in your palm without feeling their weight. And yet inside this seed is a clock. It does not tick like a watch nor chime like a bell, but it moves all the same. It listens to time, it keeps it. And when the moment is right, when warmth, water, and light align, it awakens. Quietly, softly, a tremble of life where there was once only stillness. This is how the world begins again and again, not with sound, but with the timing of a seed. The seed does not guess. It waits with precision. Some seeds lie dormant for weeks, others for years, some for centuries. The date is not written on the surface but coded deep within, a series of molecular decisions waiting to be made. Cold may be needed to crack the shell. Heat may be needed to soften the skin. Some need fire. Others need darkness. Still others wait for the voice of water, a flood that signals safety, a drip that whispers it's time to rise. The seed does not rush. It has all the time in the world. And time, it seems, listens to the seed as well. Inside the seed is a map, folded and layered so tightly it fits inside the tiniest space. It knows what to grow first, the root, the shoot, the leaf. It knows where to send its energy even when that energy is scarce. The seed breathes very little while it waits, using only what it must to stay alive. Its breath is a whisper, a pause between centuries, yet it never forgets its instructions. The clock inside keeps counting, marking each change in temperature, each nudge of light. When enough signs have passed, when the conditions feel just right, the seed decides now. And with that decision, change begins. A tiny crack opens. A root reaches down, a shoot reaches up. The first leaf unfurls, pale and trembling. The soil shifts around it just enough to make room. It is not a loud entrance. There is no sound, but it is a beginning older than speech. A beginning that happens millions of times each day, all across the planet, in forests, in fields, between cracks in pavement. The seed becomes a sprout, and time, once still, starts moving again through green. Some seeds wait for fire. In eucalyptus forests or prairie grasslands, flames cleanse the land and clear the canopy. Afterward, the soil is blackened but open. The heat breaks the seed's tough coating, telling it that the space has been made ready. Then it begins. These seeds are not afraid of destruction, they depend on it. Their clock listens for heat, and when it arrives, they answer not with panic but with growth. This is the wisdom of seeds, knowing when to rest and when to rise. Other seeds travel far before they ever begin their count. They ride the wind, spinning like tiny propellers. They float across rivers. They pass through the bellies of birds and beasts dropped miles from where they began. Some drift on ocean currents, sleeping in salt and sun for months before reaching shore. And still their clocks keep time undisturbed. They do not wake until the signs are right. A beach warmed by sun, a tide pulling back, a scent of rain in the wind. The signal is subtle. But the seed hears it and begins again. In deserts, seeds survive by breathing barely at all. They hide beneath the surface, beneath sand that scorches by day and chills by night. Rain comes rarely, but when it does, it arrives like a miracle. The soil softens, moisture seeps in, and the seeds respond. Whole landscapes bloom overnight. Flowers rise where there was only dust. But it is not magic, it is memory. The seeds have waited years for this moment. Their clocks counted every dry day, every grain of shade, every whisper of thunder. When the count is complete, they bloom as if time itself had been saving them. Even seeds of the same plant may set their clocks differently. One may sprout in a week, another in a season, a third not for years. This spreads risk, ensures survival. It is a strategy written not in thought but in rhythm. A plant does not place all its hope in a single moment. It scatters time across generations. One seed to test the now, one for later, one for the faraway future. The clock is never set to just 1 hour. It is set to many, so that life can find its way no matter what comes. The seed's shell is more than a container. It is a barrier against time itself. It protects the life within from decay, from heat, from hunger. Some seeds found in ancient tombs have germinated after thousands of years. Their clocks were still counting, even in silence, even in stone. And when brought back to light, to warmth, to the breath of living soil, they awoke, as if the years were only a pause, not an end. This is the patience of seeds, not waiting as weakness but as wisdom. They are not idle, they are listening. They are reading the air, the temperature, the moisture, the story of the land. And when the signals align, when time feels right, they do not hesitate. They begin. Softly, surely, like the slow turning of a hidden wheel, like a clock that always knew this moment would come. Let us now follow what happens after the seed wakes, when the quiet clock inside has finished its counting and life begins to stretch outward. The first root pushes downward, not with force but with certainty. It is thin and pale, almost translucent, yet it knows where to go. Guided by moisture, gravity, and memory older than language, it finds a place to anchor. It splits and forks, finding strength in branching. Each division is a choice, left or right, deeper or wider, and each choice is a reply to the earth around it. A conversation begins between seed and soil, spoken not in words but in direction. Above ground, the shoot rises, trembling but determined. It carries with it the first leaves, still folded, still unsure. The light greets them, a whisper of warmth, a shimmer of invitation. And with that light, the plant begins to change. Its cells shift, green appears, energy awakens. Photosynthesis begins, light turned into sugar, sun turned into breath. The plant begins to feed itself. The clock that once measured waiting now begins to measure growth. But growth is not a sprint. It is a rhythm, pulsing through stem and leaf, pausing and continuing in time with the weather, the soil, the season. A warm morning may bring a burst of new cells. A cold night may slow everything down. The plant does not resist this. It listens. It adjusts. Every leaf it unfolds is a page in the story it is writing, and the clock inside it ticks not in seconds but in changes. One leaf, then two. Then the shape of the plant begins to appear, not randomly, but according to the instructions folded long ago inside the seed. These instructions are flexible, not rigid. A tree grown in deep shade will grow taller faster, reaching for light. One grown in open sun will grow broader, gathering warmth more gently. The plant responds to its world without fear, without hesitation. It does not panic when the wind blows, it bends. It does not despair when the clouds linger, it waits. The clock still ticks, but it knows how to pause, how to slow, how to listen for the next cue before it moves again. In a forest, thousands of these clocks are ticking at once. A canopy tree stretches its arms high above, while saplings below wait for a patch of light to open. Seeds resting in the soil remain still for years until a storm fells an old trunk and sunlight returns. Then they begin. It is not competition. It is choreography. Every plant, every seed, every root moves to the rhythm of the land. There is no leader, only timing, and that timing is everything. Plants measure time in ways we are only beginning to understand. They know the length of days, the hours between sunrise and sunset. Some bloom only after a certain number of daylight hours. Others wait until the nights are long enough. These patterns are not guesses. They are precise. Even seedlings growing in total darkness will follow a schedule, stretching upward in anticipation of light. They carry the rhythm within them, set by their ancestors, tuned by the turning of the earth. And still deeper than days, plants remember seasons. A tree that drops its leaves in fall is not simply reacting to cold. It is anticipating it. The chlorophyll fades, revealing colors hidden all year, and the tree begins to conserve its energy. The clock is not just ticking, it is preparing. In spring, the tree blooms not on the first warm day, but after enough warmth has accumulated to feel like a true change. This is called vernalization, and it is the clock's way of saying, not yet, not yet, now. Some seeds require this same signal before they will sprout. A cold period, long and deep, is necessary to trigger their growth. Without it, they stay dormant. This prevents them from sprouting in a fall spring only to be killed by frost. Their clocks protect them from eagerness. They teach patience through generations. And once the cold has passed and the warmth is steady, the seed unlocks. The calendar inside says, begin. Even plants that seem simple are following complex schedules. A sunflower turns its head through the day, tracking the sun. But as it matures, it settles, facing east to catch the morning light. That decision is not random. It helps warm the flower faster, attracting pollinators early. The clock inside has shifted from movement to stillness, from seeking to welcoming. It knows when to change. In vines and climbers, the sense of time is tied to movement. A tendril wraps around a pole not by accident but by feeling, testing, remembering. If the light moves, the vine adjusts. If the support is removed, it releases. These movements are slow but deliberate, measured not in seconds but in cycles. Plants are not unaware of their surroundings. They are tuned to them more deeply than we can see. And in flowers, the clock becomes beauty. Petals open at specific hours, attracting pollinators at the right time. Some bloom at dawn, others only at night. The timing is precise, aligned with bees, with moths, with moonlight. It is a silent agreement between life forms that may never touch but still depend on one another. The seed's clock becomes a schedule for the whole ecosystem, guiding who eats, who pollinates, who carries the next generation forward. So as the seed becomes a plant and the plant grows into its final form, the ticking continues. Not loud, not fast, but always certain. It does not count down toward an end. It counts up toward possibility. And everything the plant becomes, leaf, flower, fruit, shadow, is shaped by the quiet rhythm that began in the soil long before we could see it. And now we come to the last turning of the clock, the moment when the seed that has grown into root, stem, leaf, and bloom begins to close its own circle. The plant that once uncurled from darkness now prepares to fold its time into something new. A fruit forms, quietly swelling under sun. Inside that fruit, a seed begins again. Not a copy, not a repeat, but a continuation. A new clock being wound even as the old one slows. The plant is not ending. It is handing the rhythm forward. The breath it drew from the air, the minerals it pulled from the earth, the light it drank from the sky, all of it is condensed, gently, into the core of a new beginning. This is how plants measure time, not by how long they live, but by what they leave behind. A tree may stand for centuries, but it is the seed scattered by wind, carried by rain, buried by animals that carry the forest forward. Each one carries a memory of where it came from and a dream of where it might go. Some fall nearby and take root in the shadow of their parent. Others travel far, unseen and forgotten, until one day a root touches soil and the clock begins again. There is no final chime, no bell that rings when the plant is done. Even in death, the clock continues. The leaves fall and feed the soil. The bark crumbles and shelters insects. The roots decay and make paths for water. Fungi find the sugars left behind. Worms turn the body back into earth. The time the plant held is not lost, it is given, passed along, layered into the soil like chapters in a never-ending book. This is not the stopping of time, it is its widening. Even in harsh places where a season of growth ends quickly and frost arrives like a breath held too long, the cycle holds true. Alpine meadows bloom in short bursts. Arctic poppies open under round-the-clock sunlight. Desert blooms flash into color after a single rain. And always the seeds are waiting. Always the clocks are being wound. There is no rush. The land has learned to listen, and so have the plants. Some seeds will never sprout until their parent has died. These are called serotinous seeds, and their time begins only after fire or decay. Their clocks are wound with patience, tied to loss, yet blooming with promise. They are born from endings but made for beginnings. And when they rise from ashes or emerge in the clearing where a tree once stood, it is not a rebirth. It is a continuation, a pulse in the same rhythm, now carried in a different form. And what of the seeds we carry? Those we plant intentionally in gardens, in fields, in pots on windowsills. We choose their moment. We water them, shelter them, guide their growth. But even here the clock belongs to the seed. We may set the stage, but the timing is its own. No matter how carefully we tend, a seed will not rise until it is ready. Its knowledge is quiet, but it is complete. And when it does emerge, we are reminded that we do not control life, we participate in it. There is beauty in watching that unfold. A child planting a bean and watching it curl upward. A farmer walking the rows, feeling the timing of each crop. A gardener noticing the same flower opening on the same day each year. These moments tie us to the greater clock. Not the one we wear on our wrists, but the one buried in soil, turning in root and blossom, measuring time in breath and becoming. The clock inside a seed also speaks to us in deeper ways. It reminds us that waiting is not wasting, that dormancy is not death, that silence is sometimes preparation. The seed waits in the dark and is not afraid. It is not rushing toward the surface. It trusts the rhythm, the light, the warmth, the change. It listens. And in that listening, it gathers everything it needs. We live in a world that often values speed, visibility, constant motion. But the seed teaches a different lesson: to slow down, to prepare in silence, to grow inwardly before reaching outward, to understand that timing matters as much as action. A rushed sprout may wither in the sun. A patient one, emerging at the right moment, may thrive for generations. And so, as one seed becomes many, as one season gives way to the next, the ticking continues. Not in panic, not in noise, but in the deep, steady rhythm of life unfolding as it always has. Quietly, clearly, soft as rain, strong as root. We end where we began, in the soil with a seed, with a question shaped like stillness. When will you begin? The seed already knows, its clock is set, and somewhere even now it is almost time. Inside each of us, hidden beneath skin and muscle, wrapped in marrow and memory, there is a quiet glow. It is not light like a candle or a star. It does not shine in the dark. And yet it is there, constant, humming, old. The bones that hold us upright, the ribs that guard our breath, the spine that bends to every movement, all of them carry the memory of light. Not the kind that blinds or burns, but a softer light. A light written into the minerals of who we are. A light made of stars. Long ago, before your bones had formed, before your ancestors had breath, the calcium in your body was born inside dying stars. When a massive star reaches the end of its life, it explodes, scattering elements into the universe. Among them, calcium, carbon, iron. These drift through space, gathering into clouds, into rocks, into planets, into Earth, into soil, into food, and finally into us. The bones in your hands are older than the mountain, older than the ocean. They were made in a fire you will never see, but that still lives in the smallest part of you. Bones are not dead, they are not just structure, they are alive, renewing constantly. Each day, small cells remove old bone and other cells build new. This dance never stops. You are always becoming, always rebuilding the light within you. A skeleton is not a fixed thing. It is in motion, adapting to how you walk, how you rest, how you carry weight. Your bones remember. They record your story not in words but in shape. A child's bones grow quickly, stretching toward the future. An elder's bones may hollow slightly, softened by time, still strong in their silence. Inside the hollow spaces of your bones is marrow, rich and red and full of life. This is where blood is born, where new cells emerge, carrying oxygen to your brain, your heart, your fingertips. It is here, deep inside, that your body listens to the world and answers with life. Your marrow responds to altitude, to need, to illness, to healing. It adjusts. It works in silence. Every drop of blood that moves through your veins was born in that quiet light. Your bones also hold sound. They carry vibrations from the world around you, footsteps on a wooden floor, music from a distant radio, the soft knock of your own heartbeat. These vibrations pass through your skeleton, giving you a deeper sense of where you are, how you move, what surrounds you. Even your ears, small and curled, rest on the bones of your skull, picking up vibrations that your brain turns into meaning. You don't just hear with your ears, you hear with your bones. And perhaps most beautifully, your bones glow not with visible light but with energy. They contain phosphorus, another gift of ancient stars. This element stores energy in your cells, helps muscles contract, allows signals to leap between nerves. Every movement, every thought, every breath is tied to this gentle energy, and it rests in your bones like embers waiting beneath ash. Quiet, ready, alive. So when you touch your wrist or feel the weight of your legs or stretch your spine after sleep, remember this: you are holding starlight. You are walking on beams of ancient fire. You are more than flesh. You are a library of time, a house made of memory and glow. The light lives in you still, and it always will. Let us now step deeper into that luminous stillness, where the bone's silence becomes its own language. These structures, though hard and hidden, are not separate from the world, they are shaped by it. They respond to every step you take, every time you lift or rest, every breeze that brushes your skin. Your skeleton is not armor. It is a dance partner. It adjusts its rhythm with yours. A pianist's fingers grow more precise not just through muscle, but because the bones beneath subtly shift to support the motion. A dancer's spine becomes more graceful not only from practice, but from the spine itself remembering how to bend in trust. This is not poetic metaphor. It is biological truth. Your bones learn with you. Even astronauts floating in space far from gravity return to Earth changed. Their bones, having lost the pressure of weight, begin to dissolve just slightly like sand slipping from a foundation. And when they return, gravity teaches them again. Their bones thicken slowly, rebuilding what was paused. This reminds us, bones are not fixed columns. They are conversation. They are listening to the world around you and adjusting constantly. The minerals in your bones are also shared with the world. Calcium does not stay in one place. It moves, from soil to plant to animal to human and back again. It is passed through breath and decay and bloom. The calcium in your bones today may have once been part of a shell in the sea, a leaf in a forest, a bird's wing, and someday it will become something else again. Bones, then, are not only memory, they are motion. They are the earth moving through us, quietly taking shape. In ancient traditions, bones were seen as sacred, not only because they lasted, but because they glowed with meaning. Long after skin faded and names were forgotten, the bones remained. To hold a bone was to hold time itself, to listen to a story older than words. Even now, in medicine, in rituals, in museums, bones are kept with care, not as relics of death, but as echoes of life. They do not whisper only of what was, but of what continues. A femur from a prehistoric creature still tells us how it walked, how it rested, what it carried. The light of its motion is still readable in the shape it left behind. Inside your own body, the light continues. In times of healing, bone is one of the few tissues that can truly regenerate. It does not scar, it reconnects. When fractured, the body begins its work slowly and methodically, forming new bone tissue, bridging the gap. This process is invisible, and yet it is among the most miraculous. It is not repair, it is recreation. It is the light within remembering its original shape and forming it anew. And while bones are often thought of as rigid, they are filled with subtle, ongoing movement. They flex slightly as we walk. They stretch minutely as we grow. They conduct signals, influence hormones, regulate minerals in the blood. Recent science even suggests bones talk to the brain, releasing molecules that affect mood, memory, even emotion. The body listens to the bones as much as the bones listen to the body. There is dialogue happening always under the surface. This light is not something that fades with age. Older bones are not lesser bones. They have been shaped by more time, more gravity, more breath. They carry more memory. And with that memory comes strength, not always the kind that lifts, but the kind that endures. A child's skeleton may leap and grow, but an elder's skeleton has held storms. Both are sacred. Both are luminous. So next time you move, when you stretch your arms or lift your head or take a breath so deep your ribs rise with it, remember what holds you. Remember that beneath your skin is not silence but starlight shaped into form. It does not flicker. It does not boast, but it is always there, holding you, carrying you, becoming you again and again with every step. There is a stillness that comes when you lie completely flat on the ground, spine aligned with soil, ribs gently expanding with each breath, heels pressing down, skull resting on the earth like a stone in a riverbed. In this moment, you are not separate from the planet. You are an extension of it. Your bones, forged from the dust of stars, cradle you as gently as a riverbed holds a stream. The quiet within is not emptiness, it is alignment. A perfect balance between pressure and pause, between holding and letting go. Your skeleton is a map of your history, each joint and curve shaped by how you've lived, where you've leaned, where you've fallen, what you've carried, how you've healed. Even the tiniest bones in your hands carry the memory of everything you've ever held. A pencil, a child's hand, the bark of a tree, they remember, they adapt, and they do not judge. They simply continue absorbing the lessons of touch and time. As we grow older, our relationship with our bones shifts. They may ache. They may remind us of the weight we've carried, but they also remind us of all that has been endured. Every step, every climb, every night of rest, your bones were there, quietly holding the architecture of your becoming. There is beauty in their resilience, in their willingness to rebuild, to stretch again, to carry on. Bones are often the last to fade. In ancient tombs, when all else has returned to dust, it is the skeleton that remains, laid in curled positions, arms crossed, knees drawn close, as if even in death the bones remember the shape of comfort, of sleep. They do not resist decay, they welcome it, knowing that to return to the earth is not an end but a rejoining, a reunion with all that came before. And still within each bone, even in the quietest state, there is energy, faint perhaps, undetectable to the eye but present, the phosphorus still there, the calcium still echoing the voice of stars, the structure still humming with the memory of life. Bones do not die as we think. They transform. They carry us as far as they can, and then they return piece by piece to the soil, a soft surrender, a gift. So the next time you rest or kneel or curl beneath a blanket, imagine the light within your bones. Imagine the glow in your spine, the soft flicker behind your ribs, the pulse in your palms. You are not simply resting. You are returning to your origin, the stars, the earth, the breath between. And when you rise, know that the structure holding you is not just a framework. It is a symphony of silence and strength, a legacy of fire and dust. You are walking starlight, and the light that lives in your bones is not fading. It is simply waiting to move, to rise, to become again.